So moving along, Lou, 6 great tools for collaborating online. Would you like to introduce our guest?
So you all need to be ready. Get your pens ready, get your paper ready, because you've got to write down these nuggets. Today's guest speaker is a well-known Signal resident and a BiZHUB member with years and years of training experience. Most of you will know her as a Microsoft Office trainer, and today she's going to share insights into the potential of Microsoft Teams, which everybody's now talking about. And she's also going to talk about 5 other well-known online tools to help you collaborate with others and grow your business. It's our great pleasure to introduce to you Suzanne Driver.
Woo! Come and join us, Suzanne. Let me...
Hey, Suzanne. Right, enjoy. I'll see you later.
All the very best.
Hello everybody, and thank you for joining this session. Just give me a shout and make sure that you can see the presentation. Okay, so I was asked to actually deliver a presentation around collaboration. And this is quite difficult for me because I'm a Microsoft, I was going to say girl, but I'm a Microsoft lady through and through. I've been working with Microsoft for 20-something years, delivering their training and being very passionate. But there are, of course, lots of products out there that are non-Microsoft. And, you know, I think Stuart said, not everything fits every business. So this was a good opportunity for me to look at what else was actually out there as well. And some of them are pretty good. I've not deliberately looked at prices with anything. If anyone wants any help with costing, obviously you can find that all on the internet. But this is just really what is out there. And I'm afraid I broke the 6 tools rule. So let's see how many tools that we actually talk about, and I split it into some different groups. So really what we're looking at is collaboration. Now I know Emma next week is going to talk about collaboration and collaborating with other people. But this is using software to collaborate. And we're really moving, and these last few months have really shown how we're moving together, and different companies are working on projects together, and we're all collaborating. It's something that we should be doing. Just like 365 consultants are collaborating today with Signal. So just very quickly, just a reminder that I've been doing Microsoft training since 1996. I've specialised, although I do use all of the Microsoft applications, I've specialised in Excel, and since 2008 SharePoint as well. And I'm really getting to grips with Microsoft Teams. I've done lots of learning during this lockdown online and sort of developed my Teams knowledge. And it's something that's been really useful. So first of all, I thought we'd look at collaboration as a whole, because there are really 1, 2, 3 main players in the collaboration, having a suite of collaboration tools. And they are Google Suite, Microsoft 365, and Workplace, which is actually linked to Facebook. Like I said, I'm not going to do any money on this, any costing. That's down to you to research. They've all got various little nuances. around what it is that you get for your money. So let's have a quick look. So we've got G Suite first. So if you have a Gmail account, then by default, you will have access to some of Google's collaboration tools. I've got a Gmail account. I say I'm a Microsoft person, but I've also got a Gmail account. I use that to keep my personal email separate. But there is a business arm to that as well. So you can have personal and business licenses. And of course, within Google, you've got Gmail. As I said, many people have a Gmail account. And despite all my Outlook accounts, I do have a Gmail account as well. And that includes things like calendars that we all want to use to collaborate. There's a Google Meet and a Google Chat. All very easy to use. My husband is completely non-IT and he can use all of these tools without a problem. Then you've got cloud-based filing. I'm going to come back to cloud-based filing later on because it's a really important part of the way that businesses should be looking at both for the collaboration and for their documents. And Google have these different ways of having a drive, but also an archiving vault. So lots of things within G Suite. And then you might have heard of Google Docs, Sheets, Forms. All of these do have options within Microsoft. So I don't, apart from my Gmail, I don't use any of these personally myself, but they're all very good. And one of my colleagues is a Google trainer as well as a Microsoft trainer. And I know that there are some good elements to Google. So some of you may well have gone down the Google route, and hopefully in this second section, we'll find out who's using what, which will be quite interesting. So lots of extra features of a Google business account as opposed to a personal Google account. And you get sort of shared drives and you know, sort of team chat and things like that. And obviously the Google Drive is really important here with our cloud-based filing that we'll come back to. Now my Microsoft 365, again, you can have personal and business licenses. Do look at your license. Do look at the cost, because sometimes people go for a personal license because it's cheaper and end up buying other software for other sort of tools that they want to use. And actually, when you look at it as a whole, it's more expensive than actually buying a business license. And I think it's a software audit is something that it's worth doing. And I'm going to offer a software audit with people as a freebie if they book one, which we'll talk about later on. So the Teams is part of Office 365, and this is something that we want to have a look at. This is the screen. You can join in a team as a guest. You can join in and have a proper full, if you've got Office 365, the right account, then you can set up teams. And basically you're looking at teams of people where you're working together all the time. And you can access it via a browser, or you can access it full the full version. And you may recognize this is just a screen print that I got from the internet here. But just like Zoom, you can have video chats within Teams, within Office 365. So you don't need a paid Zoom account if you've got Office 365 Teams. And then it will just sort of lay that out on the front there. So what have we got also? We've got this fantastic application called SharePoint, which people tend to shy away from, sometimes within good reason. You do need a bit of guidance about setting it up, but once it's set up, it is really good way of working. So it's like with Google, you've got the Google Drives. With Office 365, we've got SharePoint for sharing amongst a team, but we've also got OneDrive as well. So there's lots going on and options. And you may have noticed, if you haven't gone down the Google route and you haven't gone down the Microsoft route, that Facebook are actually doing business licenses as well, where they're bringing together, if you're used to doing FaceTime, if you're used to using the Facebook side, then maybe have a look at Workplace. Apparently from people I've spoken to, it's very intuitive, and it does actually have integration tools with other Office 365 and other, you know, the Google suite. So you can actually use it with both of those as well. So they do all overlap, and very much like Teams and the chats in Google, team chats, that you can have groups within your workplace, and it just allows you to just, you know, put all the information together, maybe on a project, maybe on just a group of people working together. And of course it does live video chat again. So I think the first thing for me is this morning, really pick an option, and there are probably others out there, but these are the three main players: Google Suite, Office 365, or your Workplace. And try and pick within your group of people, if you work together, if you've got more than one person, pick one of those that you're going to use as your main collaboration tool, and then everything else will work out from there. So if your collaboration that you're doing has got the right tool within your suite, you can use that. If not, then you can look at an add-in. So get collaborating today. It's really important that we work collaboratively. And of course, a big part of collaboration is meetings like we're having today. So I've picked 3 here. Although, of course, don't forget the suites that we've talked about just now all have their meetings collaboration. And these are separate ones. I've picked BlueJeans, GoToMeetings, and WebEx. And again, I know people who use these tools. So you've got BlueJeans here, 50 to 100 participants. Don't necessarily think that Zoom is the best option out there. It may be, it may not be. Look at the costs. If you're not using one of those collaboration suites, is Zoom the right tool? There's no time limits with BlueJeans. Then you have GoToMeeting. And for years, I've actually used, I don't use it at the moment, but I have used GoToTraining, GoToMeeting, and they are very good meeting tools. The whole thing is, it becomes quite difficult to choose So like I said, your first choice is, are you going to go down a suite first, and then there's all these tools afterwards. And WebEx really popular. My sister works for a very large company, government based, and they insist on using WebEx. And there's all sorts of things that you can get with WebEx, just like Zoom as well. I haven't put that up because by default we know Zoom because we use it for the hub. And then let's have a look. Oh, I have got it actually on here. I'd forgotten. Webinars. So we're in a webinar now. This is a Zoom webinar, and there are other webinar tools available. So again, there's webinar options, Office 365. If you have the right package in Office 365, you can do a live event, which is effectively a webinar in there. And then I've picked Webinar Geek, On24, and Zoom. So if you are doing webinars, so in your business, you may like to invite people in and give them some information, whether it's, you know, monetized or not. So you've got GoToWebinar. That is just like the GoToMeeting. I have used it. It's very good. It's very sophisticated. There's polls in there, surveys. You can get attendee reports out, all sorts of things. So yeah, I do like GoToWebinar. There is obviously a cost to that, so you'd have to look at how much you do deliver webinars, you know, against the various costs. And then we've got Webinar Geek. Sorry if this is a bit PowerPointy, but I couldn't jump in and out the applications. It would have been too jumpy. You know, it's very easy to use, and apparently very, very straightforward, and they allow you to sort of upgrade your membership and downgrade it, you know, without any hassle on a month-by-month basis. And you've got On24. Again, I haven't actually used this, and I spoke to some friends and colleagues, and nobody I know uses On24. But it is apparently very good for content, working with videos and things like that. So I think it's, you know, it gives you statistics and information. If you're doing lots of webinars, it might be worth something that you consider. So that's our webinars. And then it's like, what else is there? You know, so I started to look at what else there was out there, what else we had available. And again, I picked 3 collaboration tools that sometimes people choose to have as add-ins, depending on obviously whether or not the suite that you pick can do these jobs. Or whether you need an additional add-in. So Trello is quite popular, and like that image there from Trello, it's imagining having maybe lots of boards on the wall and planning what you're doing. It's very task-led, and sort of organizing your projects. It's not project management software, it's just organizing your projects and moving things around and who's doing what. And I'm sure Louise will not hesitate to say that she uses Planner, which is part of the Office 365 suite. They all have their pros and their cons. So Trello is an add-in if you haven't got it in the suite that you've got it in. And it's very easy to use Trello on a phone or something, you know, a tablet, and very easy to work with Trello. HubSpot. Now this is slightly different. This is sort of collaboration by collaborating and looking at marketing, and it sort of brings in your marketing campaign. So it's not just purely collaboration, it's collaboration and marketing, but it's collaborating with your customers, and just a tool for doing that. I'll be interested in the second half to see if anybody's used HubSpot. I'm hoping that we'll talk about different experiences of using this software, and maybe somebody else has got some nuggets to use. So there's all sorts of content management, marketing, working with your customers. So it's a collaboration tool, sort of really with your customers. And what I know a lot of companies do use is Smartsheets. It's really sort of like Excel, but it has a lot of dynamic work with it, almost project management work. And you know, there is a free trial for that if you're doing projects. You know, if you're sort of planning kitchen fit outs, whether you're doing marketing projects, planning on when your rain hats are sort of coming out next, your next rain hat, etc. Then there's all sorts of templates within here. Remember, I'm an Excel lady, so I would go down the Excel route, but I do know people have, you know, that have experience of Smartsheets and find them very useful. So yeah, it will be interesting to hear from you later on to who's tried these things. And then of course there's the big area of not necessarily meeting online and collaborating online as such, but collaborating with documents. And for those of you who were working back in the 1980s, this is something that we could just not ever imagine. I started my working life on a typewriter. I mean, I had to type out menus in my very first job over and over again. There was not even a photocopier. So we've really had to change over the years. And the server has been around for large companies for years. You save things on a server. I remember having to save documents on my server in my office when I had an office in Waterlooville, and having to drive into my office to go and access documents. I mean, it's unheard of now. We don't know how lucky we are now, really. You have to think back to how it used to be. And there are so many ways of sharing documents. I think the biggest thing here is being consistent within your organization about how you share. It may be that you have to use some of the other software apps to share from another company, because you might be working with your accountant, you might be working with a marketing person, anybody, and they want to share documents with you. You shouldn't be really sending attachments anymore. That's so last year. We should be really using collaborative tools, and you can work on them at the same time as well. So just picking out, I mean, I've actually grouped together, how dare I, Microsoft and Google, just because I couldn't put lots in here. So if you've got one of those collaboration suites, then you can use Google Drive, you can use your SharePoint, you can use Teams to collaborate with your files. But there is WeTransfer and Dropbox as well. This is just sort of like an idea of my OneDrive, my web version of looking at OneDrive. And generally in Office 365, you use your OneDrive to maybe share with one or maybe two people, and you use SharePoint to share with more people. And I can put files in here, and you may see on the right-hand side a couple of those folders are private and one is shared. So you can actually share them with other people, and then they will log in and log into my OneDrive effectively. And depending on permissions. So sorry about if you've got sound, but this is just really me setting up a share, and whether or not you want to allow editing. And you can just type someone's email address in there. So I may say, Claire, can you collaborate on a folder with me or an individual document? Okay. And then Google Drive. You know, I recently got involved with a walking sort of project where we were all walking all around the world. It was great, women walking. And we were all using Google Sheets to record our steps for the day. And it was great to see across the world how many people were doing these steps and how many it was adding up to. So, but I haven't got much in my Google Drive because, of course, I'm using the Microsoft mainly. But again, it's very, very good, and you can collaborate and work on with your Google Drive. And the sharing, again, is very, very easy to do. We can just share our document, and then somebody can go in and actually see your document. I'm hoping after this that people will really think twice about attachments. Don't attach things to your email anymore. WeTransfer, it's an application that I've been on the receiving end of in the past, where people want to send me information but haven't got maybe Office 365 or Google, so they've logged into WeTransfer. So it's all cloud-based. Whether you pay or not depends on the amount of storage space. You can see it's 2 GB free and 1 TB paid. And it can all be password protected. So if you want to feel more secure about what you're sending, then maybe WeTransfer is what you want to do. And then, of course, there's Dropbox. Dropbox is available again through a browser. It can also be installed on a computer. Be careful. I know people who've used it. I've used it in the past with like a group of people. And it did slow my computer down, all the synchronization all the time. It was fine all the time it was used on the web, but downloading it as an app did slow things down. But again, it might be right for your business. So do look at Dropbox as an alternative. So I'm now going to summarize. I've given you lots of ideas. Obviously, it's difficult with all that to look at a lot of content, but just let's think through what we've got. And maybe an opportunity for you to really sit down and think, what am I using? Am I using what I've got effectively? And am I going down the right path with the software that I'm using? So first of all, number one, are you going to go for a suite? And if you are you going to go the Microsoft, the Google, or the Facebook route? Or have you got another suite that you use and work with successfully? So we'll hear about that from you soon. Secondly, meetings. If you're not using any of those other ways of meeting with the different options there, then how about Blue Jeans, GoToMeetings or WebEx? Have you used them, and how successful have they been? Remembering that Google, that Workplace, that Office 365 offer you those tools, so you wouldn't have to pay for an add-in. Think carefully about what you're using it for. And again, there's other ways that you want to collaborate. Do you want to collaborate with, you know, using something like Trello? Are you doing lots of little projects, mini projects, large projects? Do you want to allocate tasks to people? Do you want to organize your time? And then there's HubSpot that we talked about, working with your customers and just different ways of working. Again, not an application I've used myself, but I'm hoping to hear from somebody later this morning. And Smartsheet, again, I've seen this used very successfully. And again, another really good sort of project tool over and above Microsoft Project or any of the other project software. And lastly, don't attach. So next time you go to attach a document, have a think. Are they somebody that works with you in your organization, and are you using one of the collaboration suites anyway? So do that. Or could you use WeTransfer or Dropbox to collaborate with? Food for thought. So I'm actually based in the lovely Martinique house. I haven't seen it for a while. I'm looking forward to going back soon, and I'm going to be available. But from this talk today, if you email me, it's only from this talk today, if you sort of do a follow-up email, I will organise at some point by the end of August a free sort of half-hour catch-up and looking at what software you use, and just really I'll give you a form to fill in about like a software audit really, and I can help you look at that, and are you paying too much or are you using the right software? But at the end of the day, it's completely down to you. I am not going to push anyone down the Microsoft route at all. It's just to help give you somebody that give you a look at what you use, and we can include accounting software, etc. As well. I've got some webinars coming up, and I'll potentially be doing these, some specifically for Signal. Look out for the 13th of July. I've actually got a free PowerPoint one that I'm looking at some animation and how you animate your slides when you're delivering a PowerPoint online. And I've got a paid for training session with that will have a special Signal one for that, which will be set up as a team on Teams, and it will be a training session through Teams. So we'll get that sorted out. Whoops, on our and I've forgotten to plug in. There we are. So technology here. That's because I took my laptop downstairs this morning to run through it with a cup of tea before I came into my office. Okay, back on track. But that is the Signal. So I hope that you have all found something. I've finished early. Stuart said that if I finished early, you could have extra refreshment break this morning. So hopefully you'll have time. Maybe you can get a biscuit as well. So back to you, Stuart.
Thanks very much, Suzanne. Yes, marvellous. A whole suite of tools, no excuses for living in the past and being so last year. I love that. That's brilliant. Thank you very much for your time today, Suzanne. I know we're coming back and we're going to be running through all of those questions in your workbook. And if anybody else has any other questions, feel free to ask them in that session. We're going to stop now. We're gifting you an extra 5 minutes of the break. We'll be back at 10:40 and we will see you in part 2 with Suzanne again, sharing her wonderful knowledge. Give her a round of applause. I know she can't hear it, but well done, Suzanne. Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. See you in part 2. Go and get a coffee, go and get a break and a biscuit. Have a biscuit, and we'll see you after. Bye-bye. Hello, folks. Welcome back. Lovely to have you.
Morning.
Lisa with Princess Leia headset on.
Morning.
Morning, everyone. I always like this bit because I get to see you. In the other bit, I have to imagine that you're there. I have to take it on trust that your name in the list means you are there. Fantastic. Hello, Sue. Hello, Liz.
Hi.
Morning.
Hello. Oh, Lorna's got a headset on as well. Look at that.
Oh, nice to see you, Lorna.
You're on mute. You're on mute. Little tip. I say this every time, or quite a lot. If you are on mute, you can hold your space bar down if you're on a desktop or a laptop, and it unmutes you for as long as you've got the space bar pressed down, and then you can release it. Little top tip there. Yeah. You're learning all sorts of stuff. Did you know that, Suzanne, with the Word documents, you can change the file name to .zip and then unzip it?
I hate to say this, Stuart, but you did tell me that a while ago.
Oh. I forget what I say.
You've got to write it down.
I did know it, but in truth, I did learn it from you.
Oh,
don't say that,
don't
Suzanne.
say
Don't
that.
credit him with that.
No, don't say that. Do not say that. Oh, no.
Just
But
saying.
hopefully there is something or two along the last couple of years that you've learned from me.
Oh, the information in has far exceeded the information out. I can tell you that much. I've learned way more than I have shared, I'm sure. I now, whenever I'm in Excel, I'm thinking about Big Bertha and Twiggy.
Oh, good.
It's just in there now. That's it. That's their names. Done.
That's like John and Fiona. They can't look at Excel without thinking Big Bertha and Twiggy.
I want to start a campaign to bring the paperclip back. I love the paperclip.
Oh, the office assistant.
On Word.
Yeah.
Hello, I see you're writing a letter. Would you like some help? No.
I loved the paperclip.
It didn't just have to be a paperclip. You could change it.
And you could animate it. You could make him do funny things. That was always that's all I did in my IT lessons at school.
Okay, before we go down the rabbit hole of what computers used to be like, and I start talking about an abacus.
Well, you're the ones that you had to put the videotape in, Stu. Crank it up.
Listen, easy. Just can't get the help these days, Louise. Let's crack on. You don't need to listen to Gareth sledging me for half an hour. Suzanne, would you like to start the second session and talk us through how it's going to, the shape of it, and the resource that you've, hopefully everybody's got, but the resource that you've created, and we'll get cracking.
Okay, so we've got some questions in a document. I've noticed there's a spelling mistake in there somewhere, but I've got sort of some questions that I really want you to collaborate together and talk about what you use, what you found useful, So I thought we'd break it out 3 times. There's 6 questions, so each breakout you cover 2 of the questions at a time. The first 2 are just really thinking about what I did cover, writing that down, see if you can remember everything I covered, and then what you use, and having a good chat about that. So maybe we can go into a group and cover the first 2.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll give it should we say 10 minutes? 10
Yes,
minutes chat, give everybody a chance.
Yeah, people to talk about.
Do your thing, Gareth.
Yeah, just doing it. Just doing it.
Into a room.
Right. Okay. Are you ready, guys?
3, 2, 1.
Goodbye.
Did we all have a good chat? Did we all find out about each other's collaboration tools? Anybody got any comments or questions that they'd like to ask? We were talking about attachments, and maybe sometimes the best way, as Suzanne was saying, isn't to attach it to the email, putting it in a folder that you can share, or using something like WeTransfer. That came up a couple of times. Who's used WeTransfer? Yeah. And we also spoke about, you know, making sure that the data is compliant. If it's GDPR and you're sharing data, you've got to make sure that where you're sharing it is GDPR compliant if you need to be. One thing that Angie did say was she did research when she started using Google Drive, G Drive, and said that in Europe, Google use European servers. So
I'm just going to put a correction on that, actually, because I sent you a little private note just now, but it is US-based servers, but they're covered by the Privacy Shield of the US Privacy Shield. So therefore, they are GDPR compliant.
I can see I was going to throw it over to our resident GDPR compliance team.
But maybe Keith knows more.
And he's nodding. He's nodding.
This is actually my research 2 years ago. So, you know, please, if it's updated, let me know.
Is there anything you'd like to throw in there, Keith, about, you know, collaboration and GDPR?
I think it is just making sure that you've got it covered, and making sure that you have a data processor agreement with whoever it is you're working with. Now, if it's somebody like Google, you don't need an individual data processor agreement because, as Andrew said, they're covered under the US Privacy Shield, so it's much easier. But it's always making sure of things like that, because if I take an example which came to light 2 years ago when GDPR came in, was 1&1, who lots of people used to host their website on. And at the time, it's not now, they've moved everything, but at the time, all of their servers were actually based in the Ukraine. And so, you know, there was no way they were going to satisfy GDPR requirement. And so they had to actually move all their servers to Germany and to the US, which was quite a big exercise for them. But nonetheless, a lot of people at the time were quite shocked because, you know, they saw a big name like 1&1, I'll do 1&1, they must be secure, it must be fine.
Yeah.
And it ain't necessarily so. So, I mean, it's always a case of making sure that you do know where the different services that you're working with are holding their data. And just to complicate that a bit more, as we're now, only less than 6 months away from potentially dropping out of the EU, unless something changes in the next 6 months, which doesn't look like it's going to. If we drop out without an agreement, then the UK will become, in GDPR terms, a third country. In other words, we will have to apply to the EU to have our systems certified as being GDPR compliant. And they're saying, in discussions that I've heard, of, well, why should we rush to do that? And so I think there's an assumption that, you know, we'll live on the 31st of December, 1st of January, we get compliance, and hey, everybody's happy. Actually, it could be 2 years before we get compliance.
I think we're going to need to drill into that in a slightly more elongated session. Perhaps you'd run a GDPR session for us, Keith.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to do that if you want to do that, Stu.
Yeah, I'm conscious of time, so thank you for your input. I don't mean to shut you down, but
No.
I really think that with this changing scenario and Brexit and all of you brought up has flagged to me that we perhaps need to engage you in a session that is bespoke about this. Does anybody else feel that GDPR and the changing landscape would be useful? Yeah. Fabulous. Excellent. Excellent. Did you have your hand raised there, Terry?
Yeah, so just a thought, could we put in about privacy policy as well all at the same time? Because it's a similar sort of ball.
Yeah, we can talk about that. Fabulous. Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll look at terms and conditions and privacy policies, which I always find fascinating when I go to websites and find neither. Anyway, back on track. So, Suzanne, we've talked about the collaboration tools and what collaboration tools people are using. A lot of the people in our session were talking about they've used the G Suite and the Microsoft tools. Fewer people have used the Facebook one. There was some concerns about privacy and data processing with that. Would you like to move us along to the next part?
Mute.
You're on mute at the moment. There we go.
So I think
T-shirts with that.
I think in the next session, can we have are we going to have different groups? So really thinking about what tools, thinking about the talk this morning, and we did touch on it in my group because but really sort of looking ahead. So what tools do you think that you could now implement and sort of giving it some consideration?
Okay, all right, yeah. So I think we'll have another little 10-minute breakout and we'll talk about the collaboration tools which you perhaps have already been using during lockdown and what tools you feel that you're going to be using in future. Is that all right, Suzanne?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Like that. So we'll give it another little 10-minute burst of that, and if you could do your magic, Gareth, and put us all in different rooms so we see different people. 3, 2, 1, back in the room.
Yeah,
go.
Well, here you go, guys.
Fantastic.
Right, we're back in the room. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. So, did you find that useful? Anybody find out about any tools that they didn't know about? Yeah. What did you find useful, Liz?
A couple of things. WeTransfer may be very useful for me, and also I really need to look at the difference between Microsoft Personal license and business and what extra things you get for that.
Yeah.
But yes, I think the WeTransfer may be very, very helpful. But just in general, it was really good. Thank you very much, Suzanne.
Yeah, excellent. Did you start talking then, Lisa? Was it?
It looked like Suzanne was talking, but she's on mute.
Oh, okay.
I was just.
I just said Keith had a new one. He came up with a new one. Go to Keith.
Oh, Keith, what have you been using?
It's an app. It's a Windows app called Pomo Done App. POMODONEAPP, and it works on the Pomodoro technique of every 25 minutes doing a task, but it links really well into Trello and things, so that rather than doing a task, having to open Trello, move it to the next thing, it just does it. So if you say it's done in there, then it talks to Trello or it talks to whatever, and updates it. And I found it. I've been using it for a couple of weeks now. I just find it a big time saver.
I would suggest that if anybody's got a to-do list and they're struggling with their to-do list, get yourself on Trello, get a free account and set up, they're known as Kanban boards, just columns, and you can move the tasks from one column to the next.
Or planner, Stuart.
Or planner,
Brilliant.
Or planner if you are,
Asana.
if you're in the MS suite, definitely. But the idea is that you can keep a card on a board and you can move it as you progress things, or you can add notes to it and click files and all the rest of it. They're very useful for keeping track of where you are and what you need and how things are progressing. So what Keith's saying is that there's an app that sits alongside that can update that for you so that your tasks just progress along. So that's a good one. Pomo, what was it again?
Pomo Done app.
Pomo Done. And if you don't know the Pomodoro technique, just go and Google it. It's basically doing short, sharp bursts. But go and Google it. It's quite an interesting concept, definitely.
Can I just ask a quick question, Suzanne, on Planner? If you've got the home version, you don't get Planner on the home version, do you?
No.
So do you get it on the basic business version? Which version does it come into?
I think so. Yes. I always lose track. They're always changing things, but I think on the first business one, you get Teams and Planner.
Okay.
Pretty sure. Yeah.
Yes, because we're using that as a collaboration tool for Signal. So just a little insight, we're all disparate at the moment, and all of it is kept using the Microsoft suite, using Teams, Planner, and OWS and Outlook, and all of that's kind of coming together really nicely. We're starting to really coalesce around a workflow. And I think that's the key to this, is thinking about not just the tool, but how the tool fits into your workflow. Because there's no point in using the tool if it's not helping. And how do you use that in your workflow to maybe automate things or to share information quickly without having to then write an email and saying, oh, this thing is in here. If you can use one of those collaboration tools and just tag someone, they will get a notification that the task has progressed or that they need to update you or put some input in. So think about not just the tool, but how the tool's going to be used, and can it lighten the load? Is there a simpler way of communicating with everyone?
And not only lightening the load, but increase productivity, because you're not searching around looking for things. It's, collaboration and tools really increase productivity because you're keeping everything in one place. So it really does.
I think we were talking in our group, and I hope it's valid, but I was talking about the whole thing about using these teams and whatever it is that you're often working alone and your own team is not that big. So who do you sort of practice with? You can't launch into sort of the working with clients. So I think a lot of it is the sort of overcoming using it regularly with someone. So I know we went back to the buddy thing, but I think the way that it's worked for me is if I can find someone that I do some sort of work with, the same as Zoom, getting into Zoom, you're in a safe environment, to use it a few times and you're away. So I think it's really important for people, if they are going to use it, is to find someone to practice with. If there's two of you, use it together, because you're not going to use it in isolation with yourself. It is about that. It's a sharing. So
it is,
before you go and share with your clients, you need to practice.
And it goes back to the collaboration, doesn't it, of working with people, because, we're all clicking buttons in some of these things and we don't know what we're doing, but you find something, you think, oh God, I didn't know it did that. And it's sharing and collaborating in that way. I mean, we're still doing it now on Teams. We go, how do you get to see everybody? How do you move this? And we all do that in our meetings. We go, oh, right, okay, that's how you do it. And we're all learning. So it's all about learning, isn't it? And
it's been 3 months on Zoom and I still haven't shared a document on Zoom. So I haven't pressed that button yet. So if anybody wants to let me share something, a document on Zoom, please set up a meeting. So
But to be fair, that's what the hub's for. So if anybody wants to do that, get in touch with me or Stuart, whatever, say, I really want to have a go with that. Have you got half an hour? And let's do it. I mean, that is the beauty of being involved in something like the hub, where we've got this community where it's a safe environment that they're not your clients.
Absolutely. One of the things that did come up, and I'm just going to throw this out to the room, was that some people felt that a Teams training session might be useful. Would anybody else think that a training session around Teams might be useful for them?
I'm going to be doing one.
Ah, fantastic. I was going to say, is there a way that perhaps, Suzanne, you could set up a session for us and we can send
Yes, I'm going to set one up, hopefully on the 13th of July.
You did mention that, I think. I think you did mention that. So
yes, and I'm going to set it up. I'm going to set it up as a meeting, and sort of do it as a training session come meeting. It's just a 90-minute session.
Fantastic. So, John,
is there any way that can be recorded? I'm on holiday that week, and I'd quite like to attend.
Yeah, I'm sure we can.
Do you normally record it?
I think Teams automatically records it if we're doing it on Teams.
It doesn't automatically, and the trouble is with one of the downsides of Teams is that when you record, it doesn't record your shared screen.
Oh,
so that's not so great. But yeah, we can.
You want to do a practice run on that, Suzanne?
Sarah's just eager to share.
Sharing.
Yeah, any documents. Okay, Suzanne, for the last sort of session, did you want to set the scene, and we'll go off and finish off the session?
Sorry, Suzanne, before you speak, can we just make sure we've got some time at the end for a Q&A? Because I know some people have got specific Q&As that they want to ask you. So
I think maybe, should we do that now? Because my last question, I don't know how much, is really to get people to talk about whether or not they could deliver a webinar, and that's almost slightly veering off the subject, I think. So maybe we do Q&A, shall we, to finish?
Yeah. Absolutely, that's fine. Just before we do that, who here has attended a webinar? Not just the BiZHUB, but anywhere else? Yeah, signed up and thing.
Yeah,
who here has hosted a webinar?
Yeah.
Who here is thinking that maybe that they should host a webinar with their skill and experience? Yes, Sarah Bass. I know you would. It'd be amazing. You would. So yeah, okay, well that's good. Let's do the Q&A. So anybody here got any questions from the thing? Lisa?
I've actually got 3 questions, but I'll start with my most burning one so that other people can get I've got a client who uses Dropbox for Business. So he's got like 3 terabytes of storage. He's got loads and loads of folders. He wants to share a couple of folders with lots of people, and so he only wants them to access those folders, but he wants them to have maximum storage, because at the moment, if they're signing on using his details, they've either got access to everything, or if they sign on using their details, they only have their 2 gig of storage. Would SharePoint be better, or is there a...
Well, I'll always say SharePoint's better, because I passionately believe in SharePoint, and it is very, very simple. If they've got Office 365, then why not do it with SharePoint anyway? Yeah. If it's not going to cost them any more money, then I think SharePoint would be certainly the way to go.
So all parties have to have SharePoint, won't they?
No.
Okay,
no.
Just the host.
The host has to have SharePoint. The receiver has to have a Microsoft account. Now, by that, it doesn't necessarily mean a Microsoft 365 user. It just means you have to have set up an account with Microsoft. And that can be with a Google account. It can be with anything. So the person receiving it does not have to have SharePoint.
And so the storage issue then would be the same for everybody?
The storage then is just, because you can either with SharePoint just have read-only files, or you can have where they can upload as well. And then it's the storage is down to you as the host, how much storage area you've got. The storage area from the person setting up SharePoint is based on how many users you have. Every time you have a new user, it adds storage, but you can buy storage as well.
And how much storage do you get with the basic initial SharePoint?
I really can't remember all the top of my head.
All right, I'll have a look.
But it does build up. But then that's obviously if you've got more than one user. If you only got one user, then it may be something you have to look at to buy.
And does SharePoint sync like Dropbox does, or is it just always there?
It's just you don't need to. You wouldn't download. If you needed to download the files, I would suggest that you downloaded them. There is a synchronization option in SharePoint, but unless you really need it, because synchronization always slows down computers. unless you really need it on your computer, then just work with it on the web browser, and then it doesn't take up any sort of space on your computer at all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Were there any follow-up questions, Lisa?
Yeah, I have got another client who uses Dropbox and they need it all on their computer, and their computer is horrendously slow because of it. Would they be better on SharePoint?
My recommendation would be yes, but obviously they've got to make that decision, and it just means that all the information is in, you know, European servers. It's in the cloud. It's not going to slow down your computer. That's, I mean, I found I worked with a voluntary organisation, and they insisted on Dropbox, and my computer was so slow. Yeah. I took it off. It really can slow down. As I said, the synchronization idea really slows things down. Yeah. My OneDrive synchronizes, but that's not too bad. That seems to be quite quick.
So what's the difference between OneDrive and SharePoint?
Basically, OneDrive is SharePoint. It's just a almost like a more personal part of it.
You're part of SharePoint.
Yeah. And there's a lot that you can do in SharePoint that you can't do in OneDrive. OneDrive is purely for files. SharePoint you can actually do a lot more with. You can create lists, you can create all sorts of, you know, it's limitless. You can make it into a company intranet. You can do loads and loads of stuff with it. Whereas OneDrive is purely file storage, purely files.
Okay.
Excellent.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, fire away.
I might be showing my ignorance here, but if you're working with a marketing tool such as, say, MailChimp, how easy is it to integrate or transfer information from something like SharePoint into or through Excel into MailChimp or something like that? Is that easy to do? Does it?
What do you mean? Importing customer names and addresses is quite easy.
Yes, from SharePoint into something else. Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, most MailChimp and that will have some sort of import facility. Most of them have an import facility, and will either use an Excel file or a CSV file, which is, as you know, a way that you can save an Excel file anyway. So yeah, normally, Sarah, there shouldn't be any problem.
I'll make one caveat with that. Make sure you have permission to put their data into MailChimp, because you're moving their data into a marketing system, and if you don't have permission to do that, it can get a bit choppy. But again, our resident GDPR expert, I'm sure, will be able to guide you, give him a heads up, and I'm sure he'll be able to tell you a way to protect yourself with that. Any other questions? Do we have any other questions? Are we all?
Can I ask a quick one? Suzanne, I just want to check that I'm right in this. If you've got doc files in SharePoint and you're moving them across to Teams, you're not taking them out of SharePoint, are you? You're just copying them. So that and do they automatically synchronize?
No. The thing is that Teams has actually got SharePoint behind it as a file storage. If you've got other SharePoint sites with your files on, which you currently have, you want to be moving, not copying.
So so that they sit in Teams and not in SharePoint.
But they still are in SharePoint, but are just a different place. It's almost like just moving the filing cabinet from one room to another. Okay.
And then, so you won't be able to access those files through SharePoint if they're in Teams. Sorry. Am I confusing everybody? I don't know, I'm just asking.
I'm with you. That's the question I want to know. If we
you can, but I think that you're thinking about accessing via SharePoint in the file explorer view that you have set up, which is very specific to the way that you've got things set up at Signal.
Okay.
And if they had the Teams SharePoint site link, they could set that up in your list as well.
Right.
Are you more confused now, Lou? Because I am.
A longer conversation. I think
I was trying to
that's
disguise that on my face. I was trying to go, okay, thinking, oh God, I don't know. Okay.
I think part of it is the way that you've had SharePoint configured in the past.
Oh, okay. I think the training session is in order, Lou. I think that's.
I think so. I think it is, because obviously when we're trying to learn about this, because we're just so that everybody knows, we are moving things from SharePoint into Teams, and so we can all work
SharePoint.
To SharePoint. Yeah, you know what I mean. But when I try and learn about it online, so I go on and I have a look, it looks different to the way we're doing it, and I think that is to do with the setup.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I have to say, in saying that, I don't want to disillusion him. Working in Teams is really, really good when you set it up properly. It's a brilliant. It's so much better than working the other way. It's just we've got to get that set up done right.
Yeah,
absolutely. If my calculations are correct, Lisa is sitting there with one final question. You had three. Was there one A and B and then two? Are you done with all your questions?
Yeah, because I threw in my last one, which was what's the difference between SharePoint and OneDrive? That was my third question.
You snuck it in.
The efficiency is brilliant.
Okay, I think we're done. I think we need to now just go away and start using these tools. Suzanne, thank you so much for coming today and sharing your extensive knowledge on not only the Microsoft platform but other collaboration tools. Let's give her an actual round of applause. Yay!
Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Nice to see everybody. And I'm going to let you have the details of that Teams training session, and I'll send out at some point the sort of software audit form, whether or not you want to engage with me to look at it, or whether you just want to have an opportunity to look at the software that you have. Yes, I think we'll explore more about having maybe a time that we can practice with our technology online. So I'm going to email Emma as an idea I've got on that.
Oh, fantastic. Excellent. Keep an eye out on your inbox for that. Lou, do you have anything you want to share before I wrap this meeting up?
Yes, I do. One thing I just want to let everybody know, BBX, I'm not sure if anybody here, a few people have attended the BBX. We're bringing it back online. So our first one is on the 14th of July, 7:30 in the morning, for an hour's worth of networking. It's the session that we normally do at the Royal Exchange in Linford. But as things are now starting progressing, we thought we'd bring that one back online as a start, just to get us all used to that Tuesday morning wake up at 7:30. There won't be bacon butties as they normally provide them, but you can bring your own. So,
can't they drop them all round? Can't they run round?
That would be great. So put it in your diaries, the 14th of July, BBX, 7:30 AM. So hopefully you can make that one.
Gareth, seeing as you're the resident cook in Signal, I think we'll throw the bacon butties over to you. You can drive around.
I am not driving around that early in the morning. I'd have to be back here for 7:30 to start the
bacon butty ferry. The bacon butty ferry through the letterbox. Perfect.
Think about it at least.
The butty box.
I freaked out when I heard an ice cream van the other day.
I heard
an ice cream van.
An ice cream van, more than once.
Oh, well. Okay.
They still hadn't improved their music.
Thank you so much, everybody. I'm hoping that you can see my screen. We've reached the end of the session. The gong has gone. Thank you so much for coming. If you came to the first session, it was a great opportunity to learn about collaboration tools. We explored it in further depth and had Suzanne's considerable range of experience to ask questions. Thank you very much. You can follow up afterwards with her if you've got any further questions. Don't forget, you can stay up to date on our website using the /news flash about all of what's going on with the current situation. But do log into your members account and look out for this video and any of the other ones we've done. There's plenty of sessions there that can help you. If you're a guest, you're going to get an email explaining more about the hub. And thank you for attending. I believe it's just Keith that came to the second session, but thank you very much for coming. And next week, our very own Emma Selby is coming along to talk about collaborating your way to successful growth. And this is somebody who knows, because her whole business is built around collaborating and sharing. So that should be a very interesting session, hearing about her journey and how she got on with growing her business using collaboration. So do come along to that one. And that's it. That's it, folks. That's all we've got. You can go back to your day, get a few things done before lunchtime. Beer Friday has changed. Don't forget, it's at 4:30 and it's just in the group. Send us WhatsApps, send us chats, send us whatever you want with a drink in your hand. And have a good weekend. Thank you very much. Thanks to my co-host Louise. Thank you, Louise.
Pleasure. Lovely to see everybody.
Glad you can still hear me. That's it, folks. Go away and collaborate. All the very best. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for coming. Bye.